represent our entire energy balance for this simple system. So if we see here in this figure 3.6, so at instant 1.5 seconds we had reduced the resistance by a factor 2, and then the current rose, and then at around 4 seconds we again increase the resistance by a factor 2, so the current starts to fall. And if we look at the analysis for the falling part of the current, that means when we have increased the resistance, the analysis is shown here in figure 3.7. So here when the resistance is increased and the current falls, then we can see that the input electrical energy or the power is less than the ohmic loss. So ohmic loss is more than the input electrical energy, and this difference between the input energy and the ohmic loss is actually the field energy. So when we have increased the resistance, the current falls, and as the current falls, the stored energy in the ferromagnetic material, the field energy in the ferromagnetic material should decrease. So that decrease in the field energy manifests itself in form of heat, okay, and heat across the resistance. And this is the reason why the input electrical power is less than the ohmic loss. So the excess of ohmic loss is actually compensated by the decrease in the field energy. So I think I think at this point I would take a short break and ask you about your feedback if you have any questions or doubts, so that we can discuss them. As I told you, it would be great to make this entire session a very interactive session. So please do let me know if you have any doubts or questions. I'm sure we will not be able to complete the entire thing in detail in this webinar. So some things we will be rushing through, but yes, the entire course material has been developed with all the details inside. And before I proceed further, any questions or doubts that you would like to ask me, I would be more than happy to answer them. Anything that you would like to know, just type in your questions. If you don't have mics, that's perfectly all right. So please do let me know your questions and queries. Okay, then we will proceed further. So actually in this entire course, the entire book that we have, the book is a small part of the entire package that we have developed. So there are something which are known as the boxes. So in these boxes some detailed explanations are given, which the reader can actually skip in the first reading, or they can come back to it later on. So that's not a problem. And here in the following pages, all the details are being explained about what happens and why it happens. So if we look here in this figure, which is the figure 3.8, this figure shows all the differential energies. Please keep in mind these are not the energies but the differential energies. So differential energy would be a function of time, whereas energy is one quantity over if we integrate the power over a duration of time, then we get the energy. But differential energy is something which is instantaneous. Okay, so if you see here, the green curve shows the differential input energy, the blue curve shows the differential ohmic energy, and the red curve shows the differential field energy. So if we see here at instant 1.5 second, when we reduced the resistance of the rheostat by a factor 2, the current started to rise. So our differential input energy dW in started to rise. Our ohmic energy, differential ohmic energy, also started to rise, but differential ohmic energy was less than the differential input energy, and the difference between these two was actually the differential field energy. So if you see here, the red curve The red curve exists only in the duration when we have a change in the current, and the area under the red curve would give you the net increase in the stored magnetic energy in the system. And if we look at the next interval, when we had increase the rheostat by a factor 2, again the current started to decrease. So our differential input energy started to decrease, whereas our ohmic energy, the differential ohmic energy was greater than the differential input energy, and the difference between the two was actually the reduction in the field energy, which is shown by the red curve. So whenever we reduce the current, we actually release the magnetic energy stored in the system, and whenever we increase the current, we actually increase the magnetic energy stored in the system. Okay, so increase in the current is associated with increase in the stored energy, and decrease in the current is associated with the decrease in the stored energy. And this decrease in the stored energy usually manifests itself in terms of heat across the resistance. So if you see here very carefully, a form of electromechanical energy conversion has taken place. Why? Because decrease in the magnetic energy has resulted in heating of the rheostat. Okay, so the field energy, the magnetic field energy, is converted into heat. So there is a kind of an energy conversion. So this is the idea about electromechanical energy conversion. So this is a simple system which had no motion. So now we come to a system which has actually motion. It's the same system that we have seen before. The only thing is that we don't have a rheostat anymore, and now we have a ferromagnetic plunger, the plunger which can move left and right. Okay, so this is the ferromagnetic plunger that we have. Now what we do is we are going to analyze the operation of this entire system. So it's one of the linear motion based a singly excited system that we have seen in our previous animations. So here if you see, when the plunger is completely out, we have a very big air gap between the two arms of the system, and once the plunger is completely inside, we see that the air gap is reduced. Okay, so this is the open position, which is shown in figure 3.1a, and then we have the closed position shown in figure 3.10b. So these are the two extreme positions of the plunger. Now if we see this entire system, then the relation between the flux and the inductance and the current is shown in equation 3.14. So the flux linkage, the flux linked by the coils which are wrapped around the ferromagnetic material that we have. So the flux linked by the coil is equal to inductance L into I. And if we see here very carefully, the inductance is also a function of position of the plunger. Okay, so as the plunger moves, the inductance of the entire system would change, and that's obvious because when the plunger is in open position, as shown in figure 3.10a, we have a larger air gap, and when the plunger is completely in closed position, as shown in figure 3.10b, we have smaller air gap. So if the air gap changes, obviously the inductance of the system would also change, and this is the reason why we have represented the inductance as a function of plunger position S. And if we plot that, okay, if we plot the lambda versus I curve, that means the flux linkage versus current curve, then we would see that for open position it would be represented by the straight line shown in blue color, and for the closed position it would be represented by the straight line shown in red color. So if you see here, the slope of the lambda versus I curve gives us the inductance. So in open position, the inductance of the system was smaller. That's true, because in open position, if we look at the figure back, in open position we have larger air gap and we have less of ferromagnetic material, hence the inductance of the system is less. Similarly, in the closed position we have more of ferromagnetic material and less of air gap, so the inductance is larger, as shown by the red curve in figure 3.11. So the slope of this line is higher. So here what we have is the lambda versus I curve for two extreme positions of the plunger. and this is what is shown here in figure 3.11. Now what we do is actually we write down the complete mathematical equation describing this system, and this is shown in equation 3.15. So we have the input voltage that is equal to IR, the drop across the resistance that we have, the resistance of the coil, plus d lambda by dt. So this is the voltage balance for this system that we have, and it's given in equation 3.15. Now we do the same analysis as we did in the previous case. So to do that, actually we break down the equation 3.15, which I have on on the screen for you now. Equation 3.15 into two parts. If we see, our lambda is a function of position x and is also a function of position I, which was discussed in equation 3.14. So I have equation 3.14 for you on the screen. The lambda was a function of x, the position of the plunger, and the current I. Now what I do is I break down the quantity d lambda by dt given in equation 3.15 into two parts. So it's the partial derivative of lambda with respect to I, and then full derivative of current with respect to t, plus the partial derivative of lambda with respect to x and full derivative of x with respect to t. Okay, so this is what we have done now, because lambda was a function of both x and I. So this is the form that we have represented it. Now what we do is we multiply both sides of equation 1.3.16 with current, and we get the equation of the power, which is shown in equation 3.17. Now this equation 3.17 is again multiplied by dt on both sides, the left side and the right side. So I get equation 3.18, and this equation 3.18 actually gives me the differential energy. So if I see this equation 3.18 and I compare it with equation 3.19, then I get my input electrical energy is equal to V in into I into dt, and that is represented by dW in, and my ohmic loss, the differential ohmic loss dW ohmic is I square R into dt plus dWFLD, which is the field energy. It is I d lambda by d, partial derivative of lambda with respect to I into di, and then my mechanical energy, differential mechanical energy, is actually I d lambda, partial derivative of lambda with respect to x into dx. So if you see here, the last term in equation 3.18 represents a mechanical motion, because here x displacement is involved, whereas the second term or the middle term in equation 3.18 represents the field energy, because it involves just flux linkage lambda and current I. So it does not involve anything else. These are all magnetic and electrical quantities. And the first term in equation 3.18 represents purely the ohmic loss. So the first term in equation 3.18 on the right hand side is a purely electrical quantity, the ohmic loss. The second term on the right hand side of equation 3.18 is the magnetic part, or we call it as the field energy, and the third term on the right hand side of equation 3.18 is the mechanical energy. And eventually what we can do is we extract the field energy and the mechanical energy part from equation 3.18. So in equation 3.18, the field energy, I have equation 3.18 for you on the screen now. So in equation 3.18, the middle term was the field energy, differential field energy, and the last term was the differential mechanical energy. And these are the two terms which we have represented here in equation 3.20. Now what I do is actually I just focus on the field energy. So the field energy that we have dWFLD, the field energy itself is a function of current and displacement. Okay, the field energy which was represented by equation 3.19, the energy balance equation that we had. So if we look at this part, the field energy part only, so it's a function of both current and displacement, because as the current would change, the stored energy in the inductance would change. As the displacement would change, the inductance itself would change, and hence the stored energy in the inductance. So field energy, the differential field energy, is represented in partial derivative form as shown in equation 3.21. Now what we do is we write down the mechanical energy, which was given in 3.20 in the form shown in 3.22. So from equation 3.20, I take the field energy from the left part and take it to the right hand side, and I substitute for dWFLD the differential field energy from equation 3.21, and I substitute over here. So if I see the second equation in 3.22 gives me the mechanical energy. So the mechanical energy produced by this system is actually given by this governing equation. So the remaining mathematics actually is already there in the book. Those who are interested, they can have a look at it later on. But yes, after simple manipulations of the equations that we have obtained, we can eventually find out that the force that is exerted on the moving plunger is given by rate of change of mechanical energy with respect to displacement, and that is equal to I, the partial derivative of lambda with respect to x, minus the partial derivative of the field energy with respect to x, which is given in equation 3.26. So this equation 3.26 actually gives us how much force is exerted on the moving plunger once we feed a current into the coil. And now if we look at this equation, it is actually a bit cumbersome to use. It's not that easy to use, and hence we have to simplify this equation 3.26 further. Now to simplify this equation 3.26 further, it's very important that we consider various kinds of motion. So if we see that plunger problem, so we can have